A company that once controlled half of America's smartphone market didn't just lose. It collapsed. And it didn't take 50 years. It took less than a decade. This is the story of a company that saw the future before anyone else, built it, dominated it, and then, when the next future arrived, refused to believe it was real. Because BlackBerry didn't die from competition. It died from conviction. And the strangest part, it didn't even start as a phone company. Before the keyboard, before the red blinking light, before the addiction, BlackBerry was just a quiet Canadian company called Research in Motion, RIM. Two engineering students, Mike Lazaridis and Douglas Fregan, working out of borrowed space in 1984. No Silicon Valley, no venture capital spotlight, just a single obsession: wireless data. At the time, that idea barely mattered. Phones were for talking. Computers were for information. The two worlds Lazaridis believed they would. He became obsessed with one question: how do you send information without wires? So RIM started building technology for wireless networks. Not voice, data. Tiny packets of information traveling through the air. Their early work focused on paging systems, the kind that just beeped and displayed "call me." But Lazaridis saw something no one else cared about. Those networks could carry more. Not just signals, messages, real ones. So RIM built devices that didn't just alert you. They delivered information, stock prices, news, short messages, instantly, quietly. And that small shift did something powerful. It changed expectation. Because once people got information instantly, waiting started to feel broken. But RIM was still invisible. A niche company solving niche problems, until Lazaridis made a decision that would either make them essential to the modern world. In the late 1990s, email was a place you visited. You sat down, logged in, checked it, then left. Disconnected. That was normal. But Lazaridis thought it was inefficient. He believed communication shouldn't be tied to a desk. It should follow you. Everywhere. Always on, always connected. Inside RIM, this idea wasn't universally accepted. Engineers worried about battery life. Executives worried about demand. Carriers weren't convinced networks could handle it. But Lazaridis pushed forward anyway. Because he saw something deeper. People didn't want communication. They wanted immediacy. So RIM built a device around that idea. A small screen, a physical keyboard, a secure network, and one radical promise: your email the moment it arrives. No syncing, no waiting. The BlackBerry. At first, it didn't explode. It spread, quietly, one executive at a time. Because the moment someone used it, they felt it. The shift. Email wasn't something you checked anymore. It was something that followed you, constantly. The red blinking light became a trigger, a psychological hook. Check it, now. Reply, now. Stay connected, always. Executives started checking emails in meetings, at dinner, on vacation, even in bed. And soon, people gave it a name: Crackberry. Because it wasn't just useful, it was addictive. And RIM realized something critical. They hadn't just built a product. They had changed human behavior. And once behavior changes, it's very hard to reverse. But what they didn't realize is that behavior can evolve again. By the mid-2000s, BlackBerry wasn't just successful, it was dominant. Jim Balsillie, the aggressive deal-making co-CEO, handled business. Mike Lazaridis focused on engineering. Together, by 2009, BlackBerry controlled nearly 50% of the US smartphone market. Over 80 million users worldwide. Governments trusted it. Banks depended on it. Corporations ran on it. Even President Barack Obama fought to keep his BlackBerry after taking office, because nothing else matched its security. And then there was BBM, BlackBerry Messenger, free instant messaging before the world even understood what that meant. Delivered, read, replied. It created a new social expectation. Instant response. Teenagers lived on it. Executives depended on it. Entire cultures adapted to it. And the keyboard, that tiny, clicky keyboard, was legendary. Fast, precise, addictive. Users could type without looking, fire off emails faster than they could think. BlackBerry didn't just lead the market, it defined it. And inside the company, there was a growing belief. We understand mobile better than anyone. We are the standard. And that belief is where the story begins to turn. Because confidence at scale turns into blindness. And in 2007, something appeared that didn't fit their model at all. January 9th, 2007. San Francisco. Steve Jobs walks on stage, pulls a device out of his pocket. No keyboard, just a slab of glass. This is a revolutionary mobile phone. Inside BlackBerry, executives watched the keynote, and the reaction wasn't fear, it was skepticism. Mike Lazaridis reportedly struggled to understand how the device could even function efficiently. Typing on glass? No tactile feedback. Battery life? Impossible. Enterprise security? Weak. Internally, the verdict was clear. This isn't serious. This isn't for professionals. This is a consumer toy. And in the short term, they were partially right. The first iPhone lacked enterprise features, limited in others. Areas, limited in others. But they missed something critical. Apple wasn't competing on specs. They were changing expectations. A phone wasn't just a communication tool anymore. It was a platform. For apps, for media, for experience. And while BlackBerry optimized for efficiency, Apple optimized for desire. That difference mattered, because consumers don't always choose what's efficient. They choose what feels better. And then Android arrived. Google's answer. Open, flexible, adopted by multiple manufacturers. Samsung, HTC, Motorola. Faster iteration, lower prices, more devices, more apps. The ecosystem exploded. And suddenly, the world wasn't about email anymore. It was about everything. Photos, videos, games, social media, touch, simplicity. And BlackBerry? They were still optimizing for a world that was disappearing. They didn't believe that inside the company. And that belief would cost them everything. The warnings started early. Engineers raised concerns. Developers stopped building apps for BlackBerry. The browser lagged behind competitors. The interface felt outdated. Internally, some teams pushed for radical change. Full touchscreen devices, modern operating systems, a new approach. But leadership hesitated, because changing meant abandoning the keyboard. And the keyboard was sacred. It was their identity. So instead of committing, they compromised. They released devices like the BlackBerry Storm, a touchscreen phone rushed to compete with the iPhone. It failed. Poor performance, unresponsive screen, users hated it. It wasn't better than the iPhone. And it wasn't a real BlackBerry either. It was a half step. And half steps are dangerous, because they don't solve the problem. Apple and Android moved fast, year after year. Better hardware, better software, better ecosystems. Developers followed the platforms with growth. Users followed the apps. And BlackBerry? They were losing both. Market share dropped from 50% to 20% to under 5%. Still, internally, the messaging stayed consistent. We're fine. We'll catch up. Customers need us. But customers had already started leaving. And by the time BlackBerry fully acknowledged the shift, it wasn't a competition anymore. It was a collapse in slow motion. The reckoning didn't happen in one moment. It stretched over years. Layoffs began. Thousands of employees let go. Projects canceled. Leadership reshuffled. Jim Balsillie stepped down. Thorsten Hines took over. Promised a turnaround, A new operating system, BlackBerry 10, a last attempt to compete. It launched in 2013. Developers had moved on. Users had moved on. Ecosystems had already been chosen. Because this was no longer a phone war. It was a platform war. And BlackBerry didn't have a winning platform. Sales collapsed. Billions in market value evaporated. The company that once defined mobile communication was now fighting to survive. And in 2016, the final decision came. BlackBerry stopped designing its own phones. Let that sink in. The company that invented the modern smartphone experience exited the smartphone business. Their brand was licensed, their hardware outsourced, their empire gone. What remained was software, security, enterprise services, still valuable, but invisible. From cultural dominance to background infrastructure. From 80 million users to almost none in consumer relevance. And the most brutal truth? They didn't fail because they were incompetent. They failed because they were right, long after the world had changed. So what actually killed BlackBerry? It wasn't Apple. It wasn't Android. It wasn't competition. It was attachment. BlackBerry fell in love with its own strengths. The keyboard, security, efficiency. And those strengths made them dominant. But they also made them rigid. Because success creates certainty. And certainty kills curiosity. When something works, you protect it, you defend it, you optimize it, even when the world starts moving in a different direction. BlackBerry didn't lose because they didn't see the future. They lost because they couldn't let go of the past. And that's why this story matters. Because it's not just about a company, it's about a pattern. The same pattern shows up everywhere, in business, in careers, in skills. The thing that makes you successful today can become the thing that traps you tomorrow. If you stop questioning it, if you stop evolving, because the market doesn't reward loyalty, it rewards adaptation. So here's the lesson, simple, brutal, and easy to ignore. The moment you start defending what made you successful is the moment you stop becoming what you need to be next. And that's how empires fall. Subscribe to Empires of Silicon if you like business stories, case studies, how big empires rise, and what was the cause of their fall. And leave a like if you enjoyed the video.